Don't let the busyness of life rob you of moments that matter. In this episode, I'm going to address when wisdom calls, don't send it to voicemail. Folks, this episode will help you understand how to recognize moments that matter when wisdom calls, and not to give it a busy signal is what I used to say. Now it's don't let it go to voicemail. You'll be missing out. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've been helping people optimize their assets and minimize taxes now for more than 48 years. And in that process, people come to me usually to understand how to save, invest money, so that at retirement they won't outlive their money and so forth. Well, when they come, they realize that I approach things differently than most financial advisors. I focus on all three dimensions of what I call authentic wealth. The financial dimension is just one. The other two legs of this three-legged stool have to do with your foundational assets and your intellectual assets. Foundational would include your heritage, your talents, your unique abilities, your relationships, your beliefs, and so forth. Intellectual dimension, okay, that is your knowledge, your formal education, your wisdom that you gain, your experiences, the systems, methods, traditions, alliances, ideas, and skills. So those are the three dimensions, and a lot of people are wobbling on just one leg, maybe just money, 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 and they're bankrupt in the other two dimensions. And so I help people get balance, take the wobble out of their life. Well, this is one of the concepts I teach in the other two dimensions in my various books and educational events. I call it Moments That Matter. This is actually an episode in a series where I talk about moments that matter. They happen to all of us on a daily basis, sometimes a dozen or two, sometimes 100 or 200. And these are moments that matter. Sometimes they're planned, sometimes they're anticipated, sometimes they're unexpected. You don't even see they're coming. So in this episode, I'm going to address one of two different moments that matter. When wisdom calls, don't let it go to voicemail. The other type is a split-second turn. I'll talk about that in another episode. So when wisdom calls, I used to say, don't give it a busy signal. Well, now phones usually don't give busy signals. Sometimes my grandkids go, what's a busy signal? Well, so I had to change it to don't let it go to voicemail. Well, what I mean is a lot of times when we have moments that happen or we get interrupted, we deem this person as an interruption. Sometimes when I ask a question of an employee in a business, they have not learned this. They deem me an interruption of their work when actually, if they're trained properly, I'm the very purpose of their job. I'm not interrupting them stocking shelves. They're stocking shelves until a customer asks the question. But a lot of times people don't understand that when wisdom calls, when somebody is calling, asking for help or whatever, especially a child or a grandchild or a client or a customer or a patient, you don't move into automatic and react with a mindless reaction and get entrenched into old habits. What I mean is you've got to be able to train your mind to recognize moments that matter. And I'm here to tell you, hey, I'm just as guilty as anybody. I've had to ask myself, when didn't I give wisdom? Okay, a busy signal or send it to voicemail when it called. When didn't I do that? And also, when did I do that? And, I don't want you to beat yourself up for how many times, because we've all given wisdom when it called a busy signal. How many times have I told you when I'm on the phone, honey, or I'm on my computer, don't interrupt me? Well, if you keep saying that, pretty soon your children will stop coming to you. They don't think they're important. And is that really what you wanted to communicate? But that's what you are communicating. So let me give you some examples of this. I just threw up numbers here on the bottom of the screen, 49 out of 53. My wife and I, we have for years mentored troubled youth. And we have done this where we help youth that are in trouble at youth detention centers. I have spent thousands of hours with my wife mentoring troubled youth who are in crisis centers. They've attempted suicide, sometimes numerous times. In fact, I'm on a board for teenage suicide prevention. And so I also am on a board for what is called the Hope Squads. Now, if you haven't heard of this, a good friend of mine, Greg Hudnall, he instigated what are called Hope Squads. In a nutshell, After he was a principal for several decades at a high school, he was asked to come and identify the body of a young boy who had been the student body president when he committed suicide. And he went back to his car and he just lost it. He thought, why didn't I recognize that he was student body president? Why did he take his life? And he vowed in his retirement he would do everything in his power to save as many lives as he possibly could. So he started Hope Squads. What he found out is that when he went around to different high schools and surveyed them, he would ask them questions like, how many of you high school students in the last year have felt severely depressed at least, 2 weeks of this last year? 25% said yes. Now, sometimes they get confused with feeling down or rejected or whatever, but anyway, they felt depressed in their mind. Well, how many of you have thought about taking your life? And it was like 5%. Well, how many of you actually planned it out? Well, 1%. And a student body of 2,000 high school students, that's 20, have actually planned out a suicide. Thankfully, only about 1 out of 10 actually complete it, but 1 out of 10 is too many. And so he found that a lot of these high schools, there would be 1, 2, or 3 that would take their life. And sometimes it would give others the idea to do it or whatever. So he thought, well, they make it taboo to talk about it because it might give them ideas. No, actually, he would say, well, if you ever felt like that, who would you go to share your feelings? And it was rarely their parents. Oh, my folks are too busy. No, I wouldn't tell my parents. It was usually a friend at school, but it wasn't just always a friend. It seemed to be the top 20, 30, or 40 students out of 2,000 at a high school, and it wasn't necessarily the student body president. It were those students who were non-judgmental. They were friendly to everybody. And so it was amazing. He would get this list of 40. He would invite them and their parents to come in and say, would you like to be a member of the Hope Squad? 1 day a week, you wear a t-shirt that says Hope, and students will be educated at assemblies that if they are ever feeling down or depressed, they can go to you in confidence, and you're not going to give them counsel. You will befriend them, and that you can point them to a counselor and help save their life. So they're bird doggers. And the suicide rate goes down dramatically. But the point is this. In the previous year, when I asked Greg Hudnall this a few years ago, he said there had been 53 suicides at high schools in the state. And I said, wow. And he's usually called on to go talk to the other students with counseling, as a grief counselor, and he found out that out of 53 parents of those kids who took their life, 49 out of the 53 parents said they had no clue their child even felt depressed. Now, when they think in retrospect, there were tons of moments that mattered, but somehow those parents didn't really think their child was really depressed. Oh, you're just emotional today or whatever, get over it. And they didn't know it was a moment that mattered. So when wisdom called, they were guilty of sending it to voicemail. And now they wish they could go back and recognize that moment that mattered. Is this making sense? So if this is already intriguing you, and you can think of somebody who ought to watch this episode, be sure and share, click that link. Post a comment, click like. But most importantly, I invite you to subscribe to this Three-Dimensional Wealth channel. It's free, and when you do, click that little bell. Then you'll be notified every time I post a new episode. And I have 5 episodes just about this concept of moments that matter. I'm recording these for you. This isn't about me. And so subscribe, but stay with me to the end. I want to gift you a free copy of a book that will help empower you and those you care about. So let me continue on this concept. I remember hearing the story from one of my friends, This Rose is for You. He gave his wife for their anniversary a dozen roses, but it was a baker's dozen. It was 13 roses. And she had it at her work, and her secretary one day said, can I change the water on your roses? And his wife said, oh, no. But she insisted. She went down to the ladies' room to put fresh water. And she came back and she says, I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of giving away one of your 13 roses. You still have a dozen, to a young lady in the restroom that I thought could use it. Now, he said, my wife, didn't object, but sort of thought to herself, I didn't even want you to go change the water, and then you gave it away. Well, that all changed in about an hour. Somebody got off the elevator on that floor, and they came and they had this note, and it said, "To the lady with a dozen red roses." And it was delivered to her. And she opened the note, and it said, "Thank you for saving my life." I had made some choices, and I didn't see any light at the end of my tunnel. And so I chose to take my life today. And as I was slipping out to carry out that plan, I was breaking down, knowing this was the last time I would see anybody because I was going to take my life. And I slipped into the restroom and went into a stall and made one last plead to God. If you are there, show me some kind of a sign. And when I emerged from the stall after that prayer, you handed a rose to me and said, "This rose is for you." Now, thank you for being in the right place at the right time with the right spirit, because I knew you were an instrument in God's hands to be an answer to my prayer. And I went back and I chose not to take my life. So thank you. And she had no idea that her secretary actually was responsible for that. I love that story. So unfortunately, we are becoming a world of selfies. We're somewhere and we missed actually being there in front of the Eiffel Tower or the London Bridge or whatever, because we're so preoccupied with taking selfies of being there, and we missed being there and smelling the smells or seeing the lady selling things at bird feed or whatever, and as if that really matters. And so with selfies, sometimes we acknowledge that we're not really in the moment. We're missing things because we're so into ourself and sharing it that we miss what's going on in moments that matter. Is that making some sense? So this is why I teach high concepts coupled with high touch. And you have to use both right brain and left brain concepts. But one of my favorite metaphors is how we came across the word sincere, or how that word actually originated. Because when you are sincerely interested in other people, you will be aware of moments that matter. Now, the word sincere actually is pronounced in Italian, anciently, sincere. And so anciently in Greece and that, when they would have pottery, they would make pottery out of clay, and they would put it in a kiln or an oven, and oftentimes when it would come out of the kiln, it would have cracks or imperfections in it. And the pottery people would melt candle wax in the cracks or the imperfections, smooth it over, paint it. It would still be functional. It would still hold water. But if that pot ever toppled over, where would it break? In the weak spot, okay? The crack. This is where the term crackpot comes from. It's somebody who thinks they have their act together, but when the first straw in the windstorm happens, they fall apart. They don't walk their talk. They're not sincere. What am I talking about? Well, in the pottery profession, if you had a piece of pottery that did not have phony wax filler, it wasn't weak and covered up, it was genuine, you were getting what you paid for, it didn't have a fault or a crack or an imperfection that was being covered up, you could stamp that piece of pottery sincere, which literally means without wax. So sincere. People can tell if you're sincere or not, if you have phony wax filler or not. And so when you learn to be sincerely interested in other people, you will not miss those moments that matter. And so this is so significant. My goal and my hope for you is that you will be sincerely interested. When wisdom calls, don't send it to voicemail. Be present in the moment and seize the opportunity. Now, if you want to learn more about this concept, I want to gift you a book, Entitlement, Abolition. It's a 200-page book. It's my 10th book, and we've gone through hundreds of thousands of this book now. I want to gift you a copy of this. You don't have to pay $20 retail. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that cost, and I'll pay for the book. You don't have to pay retail $20 for it. Simply go to entitlementabolitionbook.com to claim your free copy. Contribute that nominal amount, but when you do that, I will fire out a copy of this book, and you'll learn about concepts like moments that matter and a lot of other concepts. Subscribe to the channel, but let me tell you, When you go in to do this, there's options there to listen and learn, watch and learn. There's even an 18-hour masterclass that will help you do a deep dive into understanding concepts like this. So here is to your brighter future, to recognize moments that matter.